Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we in there. What's happening? What is going on, good people? What up, y'all? Welcome back to the Inner Storyteller. Welcome back to this channel, the Soul Expression YouTube channel, and the Ufulu Child YouTube channel. Hopefully, y'all are doing super excellent out there in the world. I am very happy and very excited to share what I'm going to share today. Now, today we have a real show planned out. But this show requires some disclaimers. Okay. I am your host, Soul Expression. I spell expression XPRSN because that's cool. And if you don't think it's cool, you're wrong. And we got a lot to get into today. So, without further ado, some disclaimers for today's show. Firstly, I am not a Christian. Okay. But we're going to talk about some Christian things. We are going to pull out our Bibles and talk about some Christian things. I am indeed in love with Christ and his example, right? Capital H, his example. I do not believe personally that the Bible is infallible, or that the Abrahamic traditions and generals, the canon text are infallible. I do not believe so. My personal belief. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who, right at the onset, if they know that information, they automatically want to check out. But I encourage you not to, right? I'm familiar with the attitude that, like, casting pearls before swine, saying certain things or trying to entertain certain conversations with so-called non-believers, just proves futile and like a wild goose chase, basically. But I assure you that's not the case here, and I'm not a fool who's just blabbering with these topics. Okay, we will explore a little bit of the Bible today, a very specific, very small section of the Bible today, respectfully, and with all of the proper sensitivities. And I encourage you, please do not bash religions in my comment section. Okay, especially people with me in the natural law community. Don't do it. There's no reason to. Don't bash any faith systems whatsoever. I don't subscribe to any religion myself, so I'm not going to end this off with, I accept Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. It's not going to happen. But regardless, even though I don't subscribe to any religion, and that I'm in fact working to have natural law, which is not a belief system, which is not a faith system, but natural law instead is just a set, a discoverable set of laws that are in nature itself, right? Placed in the very building blocks of the atoms and waves of the most fundamental cosmic substratum of existence. I want to have natural law replace religion, right? As the moral foundation in society, in humankind. But because religion is the institutional, cultural, moral foundation of today, we got to talk about it. And I'm going to try and pull people to the light side if they happen to be in the just super duper blind belief of everything religion, dark side. Now, and I say that, with a light heart. This conversation we're going to have is not because religion has nothing to offer, right? That's not the point. It's more so that natural law requires no faith. Natural law requires no belief. Natural law requires no institution, no priest to validate it, no special bloodline, no special relationship sort of cosmic relationship with an angel or anything like that. And it governs whether you believe it or not. It governs what it governs, just like gravity governs what it governs, whether you believe in it or not, right? Or whatever, magnetism, it does what the point is. The laws of nature do what they do, including the moral laws of nature, which are just as discoverable as the physical laws of nature or the quantum laws of nature or the whatever, the mathematic and geometric patterns you can find in nature. They are there. What governs them, whether we believe in it or not. Okay? So please, come with an open mind today. Leave the defensiveness at the door. We are not here to tear down what you love. We are here to look honestly at what we've been given and ask whether it is serving freedom or something else, respectfully. Let's get into it. Make sure you like the video. Please subscribe to the channels, the Soul Expression YouTube channel, the Ufulu Child YouTube channel. Go to the website, Linktree, linktr.ee/Ufulu Child. Subscribe. I said that already. Like the video. I will be going live at least 5 days a week if I can help it. Okay, at least 5. Shooting for 6. We're gonna try for at least 5. If you don't subscribe and don't get your friends to subscribe and don't get your mama to subscribe to this YouTube channel, then I might not be able to monetize this thing. Now, I'll be here anyway. Don't get it twisted. I'm going to be right here with you. But, subscribe. And tell them all to subscribe. Have everybody subscribe. Have a subscribe party to Soul Expression and Ufulu Child YouTube channels. Also, on the Linktree, besides the book, you can find a whole bunch of other really cool stuff. Let's get into today's topic, which is the contradiction. You see, truth can remain present in language, right? While being quietly reversed in structure and quietly reversed in outcome. The example of Christ as a living moral force is not the same thing as the institution later built on the foundation of his name. And that distinction matters more than most people have been taught to notice. Stories like the Garden of Eden, which we're about to dive all the way into today. Sacrifice, chosenness. They're not only theological accounts. They don't only leave philosophical effect. They are formative patterns that shape how a person understands things like authority, guilt, obedience. All of these things long before those patterns are ever consciously examined. Now, when it comes to the Garden of Eden, the first thing I want to say is that the story on its face is completely fine. There's nothing that, there's no beef that I have personally with the Garden of Eden as a story that has a moral and, makes us think twice before making whimsical decisions and what have you. This is not an argument against specific interpretations of said story. That is not the intention. The focus is on the authorship within the characters and the environmental factors that affect the choices thereof. Okay, that affect the choices of said characters. So, we have Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve are created, and when they are created, something very powerful is said about them. Well, I believe it was said just about Adam. Be good. Adam is good. They were brought, Adam and Eve, fresh into a world that existed a little bit, a little bit of time before they did. Let's say a few days, just for conversational purposes. That's neither here nor there. They come to a world that was here already, created by God. And they are placed within arm's reach immediately of a peculiar creation of the same all-knowing, all-powerful God that just made these new humans. Placed right in arm's reach. Then the inevitable happens of that situation. These humans are subjected to the manipulation, clever misdirection, and clear deceit of this other creation that was there when the humans were placed, when the humans were created and placed on the world, in the garden. Right? Immediately, soon as they're alive and they're the only humans that they know, that we know of, that they know in the story. It's definitely, and I didn't go back and reread it today, but I would say, on my incomplete understanding, it's definitely implied that they don't know anybody else besides themselves, right? The whole reason Eve is there is because of that. It's and God, they know God. So they're placed in the garden and immediately are attacked with psychological warfare, right? Manipulation, misdirection, and seduction. These humans have no life experience with deceit, manipulation, or clever misdirection whatsoever. They have nothing but God's gifts and God's instructions. They have no defense, no opportunity to develop discernment, right? But they're given a place to stay within close range of what some call the deceiver as a nickname, which was created by the same God that made the humans. Many say the deceiver, the serpent, is Satan himself. Some say it's not true. The king of liars, the king of the sin enablers and the manipulators, the best in the business. God just created him a few days ago, right? Or at least the serpent's physical body just a few days ago. Here you go. Here, you can inhabit this. You want to hang out in the garden or whatever. A few days ago, then humans, right? Might have even been the right yesterday. Regardless, their capacity, the serpent's capacity for manipulation, deceit, seduction, persuasion, you know what I mean? Temptation. Their capacity is definitely much greater than the mental defensive capacities of Adam and Eve, if we take the story as it is implied, where they're so, they eat from the tree and then they're embarrassed, right? They're just so without any mental toughness at all, or predictive prowess, where they can weigh the consequences of their actions. I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit. Regardless of how you feel about it, the shadow over this sequence of choices by all the parties, God included, makes for an interesting story behind the story. Okay. And what I mean by that is the story that the inner storyteller, growing up with this Bible, growing up being told the things that were told about this Bible, the story of that the inner storyteller is going to get, that the conscious mind is not going to get, and that's going to help program the behavior patterns of the human being that is growing up with the story. All right, especially in a child. Okay. Now, the world is a good in the eyes of the creator, right? The world, the earth, the sky, the waters, the firmament, the structure, the garden, the animals. So are the characters, Adam, the serpent. All good. It's all good in the hood, baby. It's all good. Except when Adam and Eve are manipulated and seduced into acting in disregard to God's instructions. Now, what happens here is very interesting from a psychological standpoint, okay, in understanding the sequence of choices in a given story, right? Especially a story of this this level of significance. God gets so greatly offended, it seems, by Adam and Eve's disregard for his instructions, that he sentenced every good thing, including the earth itself, to various eternal punishments. Right? The human, created with specific limitation, intentionally designed into his capacity, his and her capacity to weigh the predictable outcomes of their choices. They're scolded and eternally punished for being deceived by the greatest deceiver to ever exist and whoever ever will exist, which is created by the same God that created them and placed in by the same God as far as location, uh, you know, which is, now I'm speculating a little bit because it's not explicitly stated in the Bible, to my knowledge. God put the serpent right here, and then these coordinates is where he put the. But you talk about a serpent, you talk about something that slithers, even something that flies. They can't be. It's just a garden. You're not talking about something that's too far away. So God creates these things, creates the proximity, creates the differences in mental capacity, and when persuasion and temptation and deception, ye shall be like gods, um, is, enters the picture, God is now offended at his own creation and his own setup, it seems. Now, the theological escape, respectfully, that most traditions like to offer this story is the escape that because free will was granted to Adam and Eve, all of the punishment, all of the reaction is justified because the mistake is human made, not God generated. Right? But I think my point cuts through that. Right? Because free will in a capped mind, operating without experiential defense against the deceiver of deceivers, is not really free will in any meaningful sense, right? It's the illusion of choice inside a controlled environment. It's politics. It's not what one would expect. Now, what does this mean? Right? Well, it's not just about the garden. Okay? The contradiction is a pattern that continues to escalate throughout the entire book in certain ways: sacrifice, blood, jealousy, murder between brothers is the first one, right? A flood, then more sacrifice and more blood and more warfare, all of these things. this escalation from that first punishment, eternal punishment, that came from a disregard for a single instruction in an environment perfectly ripe for deception and manipulation to enter the fray by God's own creation. The inner storyteller of a person raised on this sequence with great reverence and sometimes enforcement. You must believe this. Without any guidance or critical thinking framing, critical thinking framing, learns that God's love is conditional without fail. Now, I don't mean learns that God's love is conditional to say that in conclusion, the real God's love is conditional. And I also don't mean that as, the God of the Bible is just a fake, a phony. I don't mean that. Words are very hard. You got to forgive us when we get to talking about God and theology and all these things, because words get really messy. Just try to follow what I'm trying to get across. Basically, you can't escape the conditionality that the inner storyteller, okay, the thing that's bigger than the subconscious mind when it comes to taking in information and programming the self after it, that force is not going to ignore the story beneath the story that I just laid out, which is definitely there on display. Read any version of any Bible that tells the Garden of Eden story. It's there. And so you're going to learn that God's love is conditional by definition in that way. And then how a child takes in a story that they are attached to is they embody the story. They rehearse the story in their mind, right? Think back to your favorite movies when you were growing up, especially if you're my age and they were, a lot better quality movies that you could really, really get into. You rehearse certain moments from your favorite fictional stories in your head. You embody the characters and the feelings that you believe the characters were feeling. This is a very common, super duper reported on phenomenon, and it's strongest in children. And what happens when you grow up thinking or grow up falling in love with a conditional divine love, that appeasement is the primary mode of relationship with power that we can see from government to man today, where government has these rules, these statutes, ordinances, laws, and codes. And if you violate them, the punishment is very often disproportionate to the offense, just like eating fruit from a tree of knowledge, of good and evil, of morality, eating fruit from the tree of morality, okay, against the word, against the instructions of God, within your first couple days of being alive, being seduced by a smarter, way more advanced, much more ancient, likely ancient being than you, at least in soul and mind, if not body as well. I don't know. And God just hates you for it. God just wants to take you out every couple chapters, just wants to wipe your whole race off the face of the earth. And he made you. Okay? That is kind of how the government treats everyday people. The governments of the world treats everyday people. That pattern is precisely what part 1 of the book, The Inner Storyteller, and the video series, The Inner Storyteller, gets into. Okay, it kind of diagnoses this pattern. Not discussing whether or not God exists. Of course, God exists. There is definitely a true creator, and the creator's love is unconditional. Uh, all of that, very, very true. So please, try not to mix thoughts here. What I'm getting at is, what kind of human being is being formed by absorbing the patterns that the inner storyteller is going to pick up before the conscious mind is able to associate these patterns the right way for truth, and for the vessel to abide in truth and to embody truth when shit hits the fan and they are calling to God for help, right? What kind of choices would be made if that story was maybe taught a different way, maybe taught in a more holistically whole way, where certain contradictions or things are pointed out at early enough stages, and with enough rigor, and early enough ages, even, that people see these things in the holy books themselves and think for themselves and whatnot, come to their own conclusions. Because, and I'll make these last couple points, and then I think this might have to go into a part 2 episode, because I don't want to get too long-winded here. I know we're at 26 minutes of some pretty dense material. But what it does create is a weird, almost happiness about suffering, right? God calls us to be long-suffering, but God calls us to be long-suffering for the sake of others. But then that gets twisted, right? Long-suffering for the sake of others gets twisted into long-suffering to serve the systems that keep your energy depleted, squeeze you dry of all of your energy in service to itself, being in tying your provision to your family members to the money system. That's, it helps twist these otherwise true concepts, because there's a big genuine truth inside the concept of long suffering. Patience, endurance, sacrifice for others, selflessness, right? The willingness to forgive, the willingness to carry something difficult like a cross. You can serve a larger good with long suffering as a concept, and when you embody it the right way. And I'll say Paul's letters carry that idea with genuine depth in certain interpretations of his words. But what happens to that teaching inside a conditioning system is actually the fact that long suffering gets detached from its original context. Okay? Voluntary endurance for the sake of others gets reattached to a completely different context. We're taught to equate it with endurance in service of the system that's taking your energy. And the inner storyteller then has to absorb the Garden of Eden story and the long-suffering teachings through an internal framework that is set in service of the rulers of today. I hope I said that right, because that's not in my notes. I'm just trying to tie it all into one kind of bow, glancing back down at my bullet points here. What I actually say in my notes is, the inner storyteller that has absorbed both the garden story and the long-suffering teaching now has a complete internal framework for accepting mistreatment as spiritually virtuous. right? So we are taught to suffer quietly because that's Christ-like, right? Christ was getting beat. Remember, the Passion of the Christ is getting beat down, and he's quiet about it. Don't complain, right? You show your faith by standing up strong, pulling yourself up by bootstraps, and not complaining. And there's a truth in that, but of course, there's a huge deception in don't complain when it's coming from people who are transgressing on your rights and your freedoms. So we're taught, keep showing up even if it's killing you, because that's maturity. And the system that benefits from your compliance doesn't have to force much of that. You arrive to adulthood with the justification for your own exploitation preloaded in your mind. Okay? And that's the sophistication of the whole game. So I hope that today's episode struck you in a good way and not just a bad way. I also hope I didn't get too confusing every time I tried to shoot away from my notes and just come off the cuff. Because I like to try and tie things up in a bow. You know, I just feel the urge to, like, I'll take really detailed notes and then I'll be like, yeah, but I want to say it with, in a way that I say it and not write it. But regardless, want to remind you to please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be here, right? I'll be here tomorrow. See you guys tomorrow. We're going to continue this discussion, hopefully. And there's so much. I have thousands of hours of content already mapped and outlined. I'm just very grateful to be in the spot that I'm in right now. Thousands might have been a bit of a stretch, but regardless, I do have a lot. I definitely got hundreds. And so, without further ado, again, check out the link on the screen. That's the link tree for Ufulu Child for all of our work, and to secure a paperback copy of my new book, The Inner Storyteller, for a small private donation of at least $17.99. Until that changes, when the paperbacks start getting mailed, that private donation minimum is going to rise. It's going to rise like the sun in the east. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.